Now, whenever I buy property, I always get a bank valuation to confirm what it's worth. And even though they can be conservative, I very rarely pay anything over that valuation. Now, in this week's Purchase or Pass, we analyse a property that someone paid well over the valuation, and we're actually going to analyse whether it is a good move. Now, it's an 86 square metre, 2-bedroom unit, 7.4 kilometres from the city. The unit is south-facing, but it's still quite bright and has a balcony overlooking a park and the ocean in the distance. Now, it's got a lock-up garage and there's a car space in front, which is non-title, but can be used solely by that unit. Now, in 2008, the bank valuation came in at $535,000 and it sold at auction for $574,000, which basically means it was $39,000 overpriced based on that valuation. Now, we got a valuation 2 weeks ago, which came in at $725,000, and it sold last Friday for $740,000, which again is $15,000 over valuation. So I guess, Tom, the main thing here is the unit pretty much ticks all the boxes when it comes to an investment, so that's not really the question tonight. It's more around kind of what do you actually pay for a property. So you're an auctioneer, you obviously see lots of people and see lots of properties in the papers. How educated do you reckon buyers and sellers are when it comes to know what a property's worth?
Look, I think they're pretty educated. I just think that real estate is an emotive decision more than a rational decision, and I think a lot of people that are bidding at auction are buying. They probably know that it's going a little bit more, but they go for it because they really want it.
And obviously you could see some of the views from there, then it obviously looks pretty fantastic there. Obviously it's a bit of a renovator's delight as well, so they can obviously add a lot of value. In terms of getting bank valuations, how often do you think people do it, and do you think it's a good idea?
Look, they don't get it all the time. Do I think it's a good idea? I think it gives you a guide. I think a lot of people, Chris, go and get the maximum that they can borrow, and then they go out looking to buy a property and they fall in love with something, and then they say, well, we know we can go to this figure, and that's what they generally go to. Sometimes there's a bit of rational thinking going in, but in a lot of the marketplaces that I operate, I generally find that people that want to buy a good property, others want to buy it as well, and it usually sells well.
And that's really the job of an agent, isn't it? Is to say, even if someone said, well, I saw a similar one sell for 700 one week, but I've got 800 grand budget, and it's the agent's job is to push them up towards 800 to get the best possible price, isn't it?
Correct, 100%. That's what you're paying an agent for.
Yeah. So we'll actually pull up some of the numbers on the screen, and I'll take you through those just to see if it was actually worth it for these guys. So they basically sold it last week for $740,000. They bought it in 2008 for $574,000. Now, stamp duty and legals is roughly about 5% when you buy a property, so that'll be about $28,000. Now, this property was actually an investment, so the difference between the rent and the mortgage would have been about 10 grand a year. So they've had it for 4 years, so it's cost them about 40 grand. And then selling costs are roughly about 2% as well, so about 15,000. So in actual fact, even though potentially they paid $40,000 over valuation, they still walk away with a profit of $85,000 in a period where most people in the market would say that the Sydney market hasn't really risen for 4 years. So that's still not a bad result, is it?
Look, that is not a bad result. In that period of time, it hasn't been a high growth period.
So again, I guess the question is, do you think premium properties or good properties always get a premium? Because they paid a $40,000 premium for it, but when they sold it, they still sold it for a premium.
Yeah, when I rock up at an auction and I see 15 people registered, I know that ultimately the buyer's going to pay more than the reserve. But I also know those vendors, and I see it time after time, when they come to sell 3 or 4 years later, they also have 10 people lined up bidding on it, and they get more. Good properties get good prices. The opposite is you rock up at an auction and there is only one person. The same happens when you come to sell. No one wants to buy it because it's located in a bad spot or it's got some bad touch point about it, something that people don't like.
So I guess the question for you, would you have bought it in 2008, and would you buy it again if you hadn't bought it in 2012?
Well, based on those numbers, Chris, I would have bought it in 2008, I would have bought it in 2012, and ideally I would have bought 4 of them in 2008 and made $320,000.
Yeah, you would have bought the whole block. And look, I think if you've got the right property that ticks all the boxes, it will always make money over time. So even if you have to pay a couple of % over valuations, sometimes it's worth it. You just need confidence in your ability to pick the right one and avoid the bad one. So for that reason, I'm going to purchase as well.